Welcome. I'm Cheryl Mitchell, the president of Tree Leaven, which is a retreat and learning center here in Addison County. We focus on the intersection of spirit, nature, and social justice, and it's been our great privilege and joy to be partnering with Building Bright Futures to bring you profiles of people in our county who are making a huge difference in the lives of children and families. And today, I'm having a chance to interview Megan James. Many of you know her. She's been in our community for a long time. She was actually on this show 4 years ago today. And we'll be talking about many things, but especially about Miniberry and the presence that she is providing in our community online for the Addison Independent. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you.
We're really glad that you're here. Thanks.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Well, and I'm wondering where to start. You have such a rich background in terms of communicating with the public about parenting issues. I know that you went to Middlebury, but I don't know prior to that. Would you be willing to start a little bit about where you came from and how you ended up?
Sure, yeah. If we want to go all the way back, I grew up in New Jersey and came to Middlebury for college. And I sort of come from a journalism family. Both my parents have been journalists, and my dad actually, until the pandemic, was taking photographs for the Addison Independent. So we were sort of working together. So I came to Middlebury for college, was an English major and a creative writing major, and then I met my husband at Middlebury and have pretty much stayed here with a few forays. We went to New York City for about a year, and we were up in Montpelier for a while. When I came back from New York City, I started working at 7 Days as a reporter and a writer, and then when I was pregnant with my first daughter, my older daughter Joni, about 6 years ago, I became the managing editor of Kids Vermont, which is the parenting publication that is owned by 7 Days. And I wrote for them for a while after Joni was born. And then there was some time where I was sort of being a mom and doing other things and doing some part-time gigs. But and one of those part-time gigs was at the Town Hall Theater, which which was my last reason for being on the show. But writing and community journalism has been a thread that has definitely connected the different phases of my life throughout. I started working at the Addison Independent again. Oh, sorry. That was actually my first job out of college, was as a reporter at the Addison
Independent. Wow.
Yes.
Like a general reporter, or?
Yeah, I was covering. I had the Brandon Orwell Lester beat, as well as some other stuff, and I was there for about a year in 2006 and 2007. So anyway, we moved back to Middlebury after, I don't know, somewhere in there I had another baby, and then we moved back to Middlebury from the Burlington area because my husband works at the college, and I was a stay-at-home mom for about a year after Frankie was born, and then I just really felt like I wanted to be back in. I needed a job again, and I wanted to be back in the newspaper world. I really missed it. And I ran into John McCrite at the Co-op, and he was like, is there any chance that you might want to come work for us again? And I was like, yes, actually, that sounds amazing. That would be great. So they hired me as their online editor, which started as a part-time gig. And I was mainly responsible for just keeping the website alive and fresh and uploading everything to the website, and then also managing the social media presence of the newspaper. And then in discussions about how I could kind of just refresh the sort of online vibe of the newspaper, we decided, wouldn't it be fun if I also made some videos? So, which I had never done before.
You hadn't.
But I just felt like, well, I can figure that out. I can, and truth be told, my husband teaches animation at the college, so I watched him use all the editing software for his movies, and so I knew he would be there to answer my questions. And he's very patient with me when I'm like, how do you do that thing where you make the sound keep going, but what you're looking at changes? And he'll be like, oh, an L cut. So that has been really fun to learn something new, but to still be in this community, which very much feels like home to me.
And your focus, it seems as if you have worlds that are the worlds of the arts and the worlds of community and the worlds of parenting. Has it been your choice, or have people just always asked you to do those things?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I got into the parenting thing because I became a mother, and it was, immediately important to me and interesting to me, what it means to be a mother and a parent of young children in Vermont. And so the Miniberry piece, which I didn't bring in yet, I had known about Miniberry. I had used Miniberry. Miniberry's been around for, I want to say almost 10 years, maybe 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
And it was started by a friend of mine from Middlebury College. She was in my year at Middlebury, Eliza Cameron Eaton, and she started it when she had when her kids were super small. And she built that. She
did an incredible job.
Yes.
And all as a volunteer back in those days.
Yes. I don't like when she basically handed the keys over to me, and I got a look at all that she had done to build up what really was a very, and continues to be, like a brand. It's like it's a real presence in Middlebury and beyond, in Addison County. I was just blown away at what she did, and how much she devoted to that site. So in some ways I felt like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can, live up to what Eliza had been doing. But in other ways it felt like a natural extension of what I had been doing at Kids Vermont, and just the fact that I love this community, and I didn't want to let that resource vanish.
It's so great that you picked it up. My son has a 3, she just turned 4-year-old, and
I used to see them at playgroups all the time.
That's right. Yeah, it's like a lifeline for them.
Yes. It is. And so it's and I should also add that it wasn't just me who took it over from Eliza initially. She initially passed it on to Jason Sherry, who did a great job, and then he passed it on to me and Connor Stinson and Linda January. And we had this period of time where we were kind of just holding it together and trying to figure out what was the next step for Miniberry. And gradually, over about a year or so, they each had very important other jobs that became priorities for them. And so I kind of took it on my own. And then I had this idea, because I'm already working at the Addison Independent, and I want more time to devote to Miniberry, because even though Eliza did incredible work on a volunteer basis, like I was having a hard time finding, where am I going to squeeze the time in to work on this? I want to be able to work on it while, as part of my job. So I pitched the idea to Angela Lynn and Christy and Elsie Lynn, who both worked.
Were they pregnant at the time that you pitched the idea? Or?
Yes. Well, Elsie was. I think Elsie was pregnant at the time. Elsie now has 2 little kids, and Christy has 1. And so they're moms, and so, they were also like, yes, we need to include this demographic in our coverage of Addison County, and it's a natural extension to what the Addison Independent does. So, it became officially part of the Addison Independent. So now it's still the same. It's the site. It's still miniberry.com. That is a separate site from the Addison Independent. But I operate it, and I sometimes share things back and forth between stories that have been published in the Addison Independent that are relevant to parents of young children, I will reprint them on Minibury and vice versa. So it's been kind of a cool way to go forward. And I will also add, and you can stop me if I'm going on too long.
No.
When the pandemic arrived and it became clear that schools were going to close and parents everywhere were freaking out, it definitely took on a new meaning for me. And Minibury, I wanted Minibury to be kind of a lifeline for parents to connect with other parents while we're isolated. And so I had a lot of fun and have been having a lot of fun doing interviews with parents about what their life at home is like, and interviewing early childhood educators about what their remote learning has been like. And we can talk more about that. But it's basically been, I think it's given Minibury an extra kind of boost of relevance, or I hope that it has, because that's what I wanted.
But I'm coming from the perspective of a grandmother, obviously not a mom of a young kid anymore, but it really does seem as if what you've been doing, the activity ideas that you've been putting out there for people in different ways and suggesting places that you could go and take a hike that's socially distanced and good for little kids, just it's such a challenging time for everybody. And to know that you're out there supporting people is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And when the paper went to just one day a week, I thought, oh, well, I'm so sad. But in some ways, having the online presence has mitigated all that fear that we would lose what was going on in our community.
Yes, and it's definitely a transition, and it's one that I think everybody knew was coming even before the pandemic, this feeling that, okay, newspapers are, there's a lot that newspapers can be doing online, and, how can we sort of transition into being more than just what shows up at on your doorstep or in your mailbox, and those are things that everybody in the journalism world has been thinking about for a long time, and then suddenly the pandemic comes along, and it's like, okay, you have to do that now. You have to figure it out right now. So it's been kind of an adventure, but I hope that we've been sending out newsletters also, so that those are when basically we take the stories that we would have put into the Monday paper, and we're just putting them online on Monday and sending them out in a newsletter to our subscribers. So
can you talk a little bit about, for your family, for example, I read that beautiful article that you wrote about your daughter being an introvert and sort of learning to navigate the school system. And I've been hearing from a lot of parents, we all think the pandemic is awful, that everybody's been isolated at home, but many people saying actually their kids love having all that time with their parents. And I'm curious what your experience, Dan, is. What's personal on talking to people.
Yeah, I mean, as with everything, there's everybody has their own experience, and I think and every day is different. There's some days where my husband and I look at each other and we're like, this is life. This is great. Like so much of our life before the pandemic was focused on, just working out the logistics of who's going to drop off the kid here, who's going to pick up this kid, who's going to organize with the babysitter, who's got to work on what day. Like, we're both working parents, and all of that getting from here to there was exhausting. And I know it is for anybody who has to work jobs and raise small children at the same time. And some of that is like a great burden is lifted because we're just here. And yet also, and yes, my girls who are 6 and 3 love having extra time with us. So they are very happy with that. But also, especially the 6-year-old, like really, really, really misses school. I wrote about her tough transition to kindergarten. It was hard But once she got over the first couple months, she loved school.
Yeah.
And she had the most wonderful teacher, Mrs. Shondub, who just had a way of connecting to her, and who was incredible doing remote learning too, but it's just not the same. And you know, it's hard to get your kid on a computer screen and not have them distracted. And I mean, I don't know. I feel all the things all the time. And I think most parents probably, and kids right now, are feeling all the things.
All those things.
All the time. And we're lucky. I just want to put that out there, that we are very, very lucky to have 2 jobs and a place to live. And my parents live close by, and they've been sort of part of our pod. So, you know, we have been very, very lucky.
Are you part of the extended James family?
No, I am not. People always ask, but no, I am not related to the Vermont James family. We are. My dad's from England, so we're of James is from England. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit? So eventually, things are going to reopen. We think the schools are going to reopen. What will it be like for you going back to the way things used to be, or do you have dreams for the way things could be different in our community?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like the pandemic has laid bare all of the problems that were already existing in our way of life. And you know, the thing that is so difficult is that we are working as if we're 21st century people working all the time, but we're now living this sort of old-fashioned life where our kids are with us all the time. And those things don't go together. They can't. You can't work a full-time 21st century demanding job while having your kids in your home, and somebody has to take care of them. And I do think that there are changes that will have to come as a result of when we go back. I personally, there are some things about this time that I'd love to incorporate into our family life. I think staying closer to home has been a real blessing in some ways. We're definitely a kind of go family. What are we going to do today? What event are we going to go to? How can we spend more time at the library? I love all those things, but I think having sort of centering around our home has been really nice for all of us in some ways. We're gardening, and we're cooking together, and we're that stress of figuring out what are you going to eat every night for dinner, and what are you going to cook for the kids for dinner every night after you're done with work. It's that has just disappeared because we're home all day. So I'm well, I guess I'll take out some meat and thaw it now, and it's just, I don't know. I feel like I've wandered away from the crux of your question, but
it sounds like you're going to maybe figure it out, and you'll share it with us because you're a public figure and you're willing to write about your life. Because I think a lot of people are feeling that same way. This has been, in some ways, especially if you had enough resources to be safe at home. And, there's a lot of positive things, and it would be nice to hold on to the things that were great.
For sure. I also want to emphasize that one thing that I've felt self-conscious about lately is that I don't want Minibury to just be me. I don't want it to just be my experience, because my experience is not it's not the same.
I think that's why it's so cool that you're doing the interviews and you're writing up, what's going on for other parents and for other early care providers. I feel like you're giving us a really beautiful menu of what this community has been like in a time of dramatic change. And I'm also realizing that we're going to run out of time, and I've probably forgotten to ask things that you maybe would like to talk about.
Well, I'll tell you some of the cool, for anyone who's listening who hasn't been to Minibury, some of the cool things that I've been proud of that I did over the pandemic was the At Home series, which was in Q&As with families at home with their kids. Just what does your day look like? How are you balancing your work and your life and all those things? And those have been wonderful, and I would love to get more of those. I talked to Joanna Caldwell, who runs Showing Up for Racial Justice in Middlebury, about talking to your kids about race and justice. And that was just dipping Minnieberry the toe into the topic of racial justice. But I was happy to get that on there and get that conversation started. I also did an interview with Linda January at Otter Creek about what it was going to look like when they reopened. They're now open, so I actually wanted to check back in with her to see how it's going now that they're a few weeks into offering childcare during the pandemic. So,
I have just been so amazed at the way this community has navigated these sudden shutdown, everything shifts, and the fears, and trying to stay in touch with parents, and now the reopenings, and how people are, in some ways it feels as if the early childhood community, even though we're in separate places, has gotten pulled closer and closer together during this time as people are sharing their fears. And
definitely.
And you're a central piece of that. I feel like you've been right there in the middle.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky to be in the loop with a lot of great people who are doing great things locally, and I'm thankful for that, because I want to get the word out.
Okay. And do you want to? I know that you're touching through Minnieberry on summer camps. What's your assessment about what will be happening?
Yes, well, I do have, so every year Minnieberry has done a summer camp guide, and we do have the guide up and updated for this summer, including every camp that has changed their policy or canceled certain sessions. It's all updated on our summer camp page. There are a lot of camps that are still operating normally, day camps, and there's some that still have spots. So it's definitely like, there's still a lot of options out there for parents for the summer. I haven't thought that far ahead because I've been like, it's been like every day, just like every day. But that information is on Minnieberry.
Well, thank you so much, Megan, for having the time to talk with us. For those of you that are interested in the things that Megan's been talking about, the contact information for her and for Minnieberry is going to come up in just a minute. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank both Darla Senecal, who produces this show, and also Middlebury Community Television, who is just amazing to work with. And they've helped us to keep this going, even though we're doing it from our own homes now instead of their station. But if you have information you'd like to get out, you should talk to them too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.